protectors of MYTHRONS' secret. The dangers faced by the Samurai on their quest were not all external. Songweaver Uriel saw that some of her comrades were internally tempted by the Heartwood's endless power, especially Arcanist Grey. As they journeyed back to Asteria, she convinced the Samurai that for the great tree Aperion to remain truly safe, its location must remain forever secret. That night, they joined in casting a globe of disremembrance, erasing all memories of the tree's location. When the Samurai parted ways, though, instead of returning home, Uriel shadowed Arcanist Grey. She saw him head back towards Daedalus Peak and discovered that he had drawn a secret map before the disremembrance, so he could return to steal Aperion. Uriel confiscated the map and banished Arcanist Grey from the Samurai. She realized Aperion must be protected, but decided Asteria's men were too covetous of its power to be trusted. She established the female-only Sadir, the Hearth Sisters, who swore an undying oath to protect Aperion and the secret of its location. Starhorn disagreed, and he wove the location of Daedalus Peak into the Magmar's sacred song, the Dance of Dreams, so that anyone deemed worthy by the 13 aspects could learn of Hyperion's whereabouts. Kaon Daedalus had also disagreed with Songweaver Uriel's decision, and imbued the secret within Swordmaster Sway's dual-wielding blades, Solstice and Winterblade. Before mysteriously vanishing, she had secretly dispatched the female Vanna to help guard Aperion's clandestine location. At Daedalus Peak, young Aperion dropped its first potent petals, transforming the morning mist into the first of the mana-rich crystal wisps, which allowed the Sadir access to the voices of winds, including the ability to morph into various animal aspects. Thus, they protected the great tree of Aperion, fulfilling the prophecy of ages in solitude until the unexpected arrival of the Vanar reinforcements. The Trinity Mandates and the Great Diaspora. Returning to Asteria, Songweaver Uriel was welcomed as a hero. In the void left by the death of Kaon Daedalus, she was universally acclaimed as Asteria's new leader. But Uriel was a warrior at heart. She was not well suited to governing an increasingly complex, growing empire. Hardened by travel and Spartan in her ways, she was impatient with the nuances of politics and with the Astari people. They were soft and inwardly focused. The rich and entitled had become lazy and overly dependent on the crystals, frivolously wasting the precious and rapidly depleting resource. Uriel became bitter, angry that her teacher Kaon and the Samurai had sacrificed so much for a selfish and ungrateful people who cared only for themselves and their precious crystals. Eventually, Uriel deemed it necessary to restrict the use of crystals. She established the Trinity Mandates. The first mandate, which declared that under penalty of imprisonment, any Astari citizen who used a crystal must refrain from practicing magic for a set period of time to balance the debt of use. The second mandate established an elaborate set of permissions and rules governing appropriate crystal usage. The third mandate outlined specific priorities, strictly forbidding the use of crystals for simple entertainment or pleasure. The Astari people were furious. Many felt they were being oppressed, that the mandates violated their rights and fundamental Astari beliefs. Some had grown so dependent on the crystals that they became physically ill without them. Astaris hoarded, smuggled and stole crystals from neighboring towns. Some scoured the surrounding Sundrop Mountains, desperately seeking more crystals to satiate their unceasing hunger. Other groups simply left Astaria, crossing the treacherous mountains in pursuit of their own destinies and new sources of crystals. The dawn of the Vetruvians. Among the disparate groups who fled the Astari mandates was a group of pilgrims, visionaries, and explorers who traveled directly east. They discovered the lush and stunning coastlines of the continent of AKRAM. They established the city of Cairo, which one day would become the capital of their new nation. The interior of the country was mostly arid desert, but moving down the coast, they encountered the calmer waters of the reef-sheltered bays and discovered vast nodes of copper, tin, iron, and other metals. Amid the dunes of Mahor, they discovered subterranean sources of pristine water, erecting massive pyramid towers to extract the pure water from deep underground. They established cities like Tyvia, which became home to the finest weaponsmiths, as well as Pire and nearby Morane, which became home to the finest artisans and craftsmen. Most of the Alcuin lawmasters moved to Cairo, setting up the Ostrakon, a sister institution to the Seventh Sanctum. In time, the Ostrakon became a prominent university and bastion of learning, the epicenter of academic and arcane knowledge on MYTHRON, where the best and brightest scholars would learn from peerless Astari sages, respectful of the finite supply of crystal energy, but unfettered by the Astari mandates. Despite the scarcity of water, AKRAM's plentiful metals attracted the best Astari craftsmen. The metallurgical arts flourished, producing advances that soon outstripped Astari technologies. From among this new breed of craftsmen emerged one particularly brilliant Astari, Atar. With unparalleled speed, he swiftly ascended the Ostracon's ranks, earning the titles of Grand Lawmaster, High Artificer, and Prime Arcanist. He was also a tireless explorer, who would one day learn that AKRAM had as of yet undiscovered resources more precious than anyone could have previously imagined. The star crystals of AKRAM. While exploring the Aymara canyons, Atar came upon something no Astari had ever seen. Sparkling brighter than the setting sun were hundreds of star crystals created by the original petals of the first great blooming, bursting with concentrated magical energy, pure and crisp, unlike any other. They were untouched by Astari hands and undepleted by Astari magic. But that alone didn't explain their intensity. Atar realized that not only was the energy of these star crystals undiminished, but for the millennia they had sat there undisturbed, Sheltered within Aymara Canyon's protective walls, they had been absorbing starlight and growing stronger. Attar established the Order of Star and named himself Attar Starstrider. He became rich and influential, but remained a Renaissance man and inventor at heart, never obsessed with power or wealth. To make the waterless interior of the continent more habitable, Attar invented the Sand Shield, a mechanized suit of star-powered armor that minimized water loss. Attar coined the term Vetruvian, the remade man, which the people themselves quickly adopted. Attar continually refined his sand shields, making them lighter and stronger. Some were even biologically integrated into the body, all but eliminating water loss, granting the wearer superhuman abilities and opening new aesthetic possibilities. Water was shared freely with the young, but at adolescence, integration with one's suit through the solemn rite of melding became a civic obligation and an essential step towards Vetruvian adulthood. Using star crystals, Attar sparked life into mechanical objects, creating the first sentient golems and increasingly sophisticated mechanical beings that would one day become the Mechanists. In Cairo and Pirhe, the Order of Star learned to manipulate heat, electricity, and wind to shape metal into customizable armor and floating platforms. Years later, they would join the star crystals with the sand silica to open portals to other micro-dimensions, forge the first portal obelisks, and summon the ephemeral wind dervishes, silica-based races of the silhouette tracers from the Sea of Dust and the legendary Jax. Attar's final creations were the flying windshrikes and mirror masters, which could organically replicate anything before them. But his most important legacy was that the Vetruvians, rather than searching for power solely from the Great Tree, discovered that the true source of power came from the stars themselves. The Twin Empires. Many who had left Astaria returned with exaggerated tales of fertile soil and giant crystals the size of boulders. But not all who left Astaria seeking fortune actually found what they were looking for. Some headed north to Celandine, pursuing stories of previously unknown gold-shimmering crystals, sun crystals, that could absorb sunlight, as well as rumors of a second great tree nourished by the sun. They discovered neither, but they did carve out a life for themselves. The Harmane clan called their newly established home Windcliff, while those who called themselves the Order of the Second Sons and the Light Chasers established the towering city of Sunforge on the highest peak in Celandine. In time, the continent became home to the Lionar Kingdoms. Another hearty group of Astari explorers chased similar tales northeast, to the exotic and mysterious continent of Zenkai. They found a harsh and dangerous land of wet jungles, frigid mountains, arid deserts, and ghostly predators at every turn. But they conquered the land, taming and riding many of these creatures, hunting and killing with deadly precision many others. These agile and lethal warriors were the forefathers of the Songhai Empire, the founders of the cities of Zan and Kado. Traveling inland, they discovered the Twilight Spring, where dusk and dawn mixed together, blurring light and dark, life and death, blood and earth, animal and human. It was a place where boundaries merged, an ethereal vortex that allowed the Songhai to commune with their ancestors and spirit essence animals, with mystical twilight seals establishing the ancestral spirits and zodiac masks. Although they could not transform into the animals themselves, like the Vanna, they could inherit the abilities and traits of their representative spirit animal. Some Songhai rulers later came to believe that they were the physical descendants of their patron animal, including Kalios the ghost tiger, Genbo the sable tortoise, and Tagon the citrine dragon. But these were not the only immigrants to Zenkai. Foreseeing the destruction of Istari and the birth of a future hero on the continent of Zenkai, the Chakra avatars journeyed to the isolated Saber Spine Mountains. Hidden on its steepest slopes, they built the Chakra Monastery, where they stayed meditating in solitude, honing their skills, ready to return in MYTHRONS' time of need. The Golden Age of Peace. One by one, the Senarai passed away, confident in their decisions and comforted by the knowledge that they left behind a golden age of peace. But Uriel brooded over the prophecy of the ages. She knew peace would not last forever. On her deathbed, she made Starhorn promise that he would leave Astaria and travel to the outer continents in search of the next champions, who would assume the mantle of the Senarai, the keepers of peace and protectors of MYTHRON's greatest secret. She reminded Starhorn that the Chakra avatars had moved northeast, and that it was likely the next destined hero would be born there. Starhorn agreed in principle, but he did not leave right away. He already had an inkling of who would succeed the Senarai, who MYTHRON's next great leader would be. The 13 aspects remained in Astaria, guiding the people, helping maintain order, and ultimately grooming successive generations of Astari leaders as their civilization spread across the globe. As the ongoing study of magic and science brought vast increases in knowledge and power, both Astaria and its far-flung settlements continued to grow in both size and sophistication. The central government's control lessened. Eventually, inevitably, these nations would establish their independence, giving rise to the Lionar kingdoms in Celandine, the Songhai Empire in Zenkai, and the Vetruvian Imperium on AKRAM. But not yet. The Ascension of Emperor Sargos. Astaria flourished in peace and prosperity, its majestic cities agleam like the crystals whose power they were built upon. The 13 aspects guided the Astari and secretly kept their worst impulses in check. For while Astaria was outwardly a land of shining beauty, soaring white towers and jeweled mantles, inwardly, greed and corruption had seeped into the people's hearts, undermining their once idealistic society with cloying narcissistic decay. As the continents tried to assert their independence, Astaria treated them as vassal nations, collecting a tribute tax in the form of crystals for the privilege of being part of the Astari Empire. This was the Astaria on which the boy Emperor Sargos ascended to power. Intellectually curious, with an insatiable appetite for science, magic, and books of all sorts, young Sargos was beloved by his people and respected by the 13 aspects. Early in his reign, while studying in the Alcune Library, Sargos found fragments that hinted of a second empire. He summoned Valknu, Vath, and Starhor, who reluctantly confirmed the prophecy that claimed a new empire would rise from the ashes of the old. But they would reveal nothing else. For the first time, Sargos suspected they were keeping something from him. Resuming his studies, he found no other mention of the prophecy. When he went to reconfirm his earlier findings, the ancient tomes in which he first found mention of the Second Empire had vanished. Sargos was convinced Valknu was hiding the truth. Thus were planted the first seeds of Sargos' distrust of the 13 aspects, a deepening strife that festered within Sargos' soul. By the time Emperor Sargos was a young man, Astaria was already in decline. But Sargos never forgot the prophecy of a greater Second Empire, and he continued to dream of a unified Astaria, whose true greatness lay ahead. Sargos saw the Lionar, VETRUVIANS, and Songhai flourishing on the strength of their crystal resources. But he knew the ultimate source of those crystals was the weeping tree, which grew on Astari soil. Seeking a way to reassert Astari hegemony, he conceived of a plan to build a massive, towering structure that would not only symbolize Astari primacy and dominance, it would ensure it for millennia to come. He called it the Monolith. Construction of the Monolith. The monolith conceived of by Sargos would be much more than just a symbol. It would enclose the weeping tree with vast star lenses designed to capture starlight, amplifying and focusing the cosmic light on the weeping tree, making it stronger and healthier, while simultaneously hastening the next great blooming. At the same time, the colossal structure would ensure that the petals released on the next blooming, and all the power they contained, would forever remain inside Astaria. In the short term, construction of the monolith would consume more crystals than ever before, aggravating existing shortages and provoking even greater unrest from the overtaxed continents. In the long run, however, Sargos knew the monolith would provide Astaria with virtually unlimited magical energy, while denying its rivals the same. Emperor Sargos enlisted the best and brightest minds of the Astari Empire. Mechanists, law masters, mana forgers, spellbinders, and directed their combined energies on designing and building the monolith. The 13 Aspects counseled Sargos that building the monolith was a mistake. Its construction would violate the Trinity mandates, which were established to maintain and preserve MYTHRONS' harmony for future millennia. Some elder Astari agreed, warning Sargos of the potentially dire consequences that would result from building the monolith. Sargos ignored them all, confident in his decision and suspicious of their motives. Rallying the common people behind him under the banner of progress and Astari pride, Sargos publicly denounced the 13 Aspects for trying to maintain the status quo at the expense of the Astari people. He allocated a large percentage of harvested crystals to building the monolith, but at the same time rescinded the first and second and third mandates, giving the people once more unfettered access to the crystals. The popularity of Emperor Sargos and his monolith soared as the Astari people envisioned a limitless supply of magical power and a glorious new world order. Breaking of the 13 Aspects. The construction of the monolith continued for 2 decades, slowly, inexorably exhausting all of Astaria's crystals. By the time the monolith was 3/4 complete, the last Astari crystal had been consumed. Wholly dependent on foreign crystals, and forced to endure greater austerity than the original Astari mandates had ever caused, the people turned against the monolith, and the Emperor who had envisioned it. Sargos' inner circle became fractured by factional fights and personal disputes, as even the most privileged Astari were now forced to chase after an ever-dwindling supply of crystals. One night, Valknu had a dream in which an inky cloud consumed the golden chrysalis and turned MYTHRONS' continents into crumbling ash. It weighed on him tremendously, and after much meditation, Valknu made the decision to disband the 13 Aspects, splintering them away from God's heel. Calixion fled to southern Aurora, Jorsha to the dunes of Maor, Kragon went to Ash Valley, Ishtara to the Azure Mountains, Narmith hid in the Emerald Vale, Parnax to Shimzar Jungle, Karl went to the Shadowlands, Ragnara to the Obsidian Woods, Tavoth went to the Forbidden Steppes, Irsada to the Cobalt Isles. Starhorn traveled to the Fist of the Four Winds, which guarded the secrets of the 4 elemental spheres. Breaking of the 13 Aspects. The construction of the monolith continued for 2 decades, slowly, inexorably exhausting all of Astaria's crystals. By the time the monolith was 3/4 complete, the last Astari crystal had been consumed. Wholly dependent on foreign crystals, and forced to endure greater austerity than the original Astari mandates had ever caused, the people turned against the monolith, and the Emperor who had envisioned it. Sargos' inner circle became fractured by factional fights and personal disputes, as even the most privileged Astari were now forced to chase after an ever-dwindling supply of crystals. One night, Valknu had a dream in which an inky cloud consumed the golden chrysalis and turned MYTHRONS' continents into crumbling ash. It weighed on him tremendously, and after much meditation, Valknu made the decision to disband the 13 aspects, splintering them away from God's heel. Calixion fled to southern Aurora, Jorsha to the dunes of Maor, Kragon went to Ash Valley, Ishtara to the Azure Mountains, Narmith hid in the Emerald Vale, Parnax to Shimzar Jungle, Karl went to the Shadowlands, Ragnara to the Obsidian Woods, Tavoth went to the Forbidden Steppes, Irsada to the Cobalt Isles. Starhorn traveled to the Fist of the Four Winds, which guarded the secrets of the 4 elemental spheres, and eventually settled alone in the Whispering Blades. Varth returned to Magari, where he tamed the wild Macantor beasts near Mokvalir and used his magic to evolve creatures in the secluded Beastlands, metamorphosing them into the first Colossi. He used star crystals to create new types of golems near the storm metal regions and built the Amberhorn Citadel, where he invited all the sentient creatures on Magari to join him. Valknu remained in the Grand Trianon with Emperor Sargos, awaiting the encroaching darkness. The coming of RASHA and the Fists of AKRAM. As Astaria's dependence on imported crystals far outstripped even the onerous tribute taxes imposed on the vassal continents, it began to accumulate massive debts. The mercantile class became increasingly powerful, with few opportunities in the moribund Astari economy. Military service gained in popularity among the increasingly disaffected Astari youth, and it gained in prestige as well. This shift in the socio-economic paradigm gave birth to an elite warrior class called the Fists of AKRAM in honor of the legendary Swords of AKRAM from the Age of Wonder. By the time an ambitious young soldier named RASHA became the Lord Marshal of the realm, the mercantile and warrior classes represented true power in Astaria, reducing Emperor Sargos to little more than a figurehead. RASHA had enlisted as a commoner orphan with no royal blood, and had quickly risen up through the ranks to Field Marshal during the Shadowlands campaign. He transformed the Fists of AKRAM into the dominant military power in Astaria. Led by RASHA, they pushed their own agenda and won the hearts of the common people, who saw Emperor Sargos as ineffectual, and the Great Astari Council as an inefficient bureaucracy run by privileged elites in lofty white towers. As part of the Inner Council, Lord Marshal RASHA supported the Emperor's view that construction of the monolith should continue to completion. RASHA agreed it was critical that Astaria not be dependent on external resources in the future. However, he also thought Astaria was weakened by its reliance on foreign trade in the mercantile class. He believed a simpler strategy to meet Astaria's needs was to take what it wanted using its unrivaled military. Out of the Fists of AKRAM, he developed the Kurakan, or Swift Wind, a secret sect of elite assassin spies answerable only to him. Valknu warned Sargos of RASHA's growing power, but Sargos no longer trusted the magma or their motives, and quickly dismissed the warnings as just another one of their misleading ploys.